This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the pledge and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. I have just a little bit of clarity, or I want to add one and then a little bit of clarity. I'd like to switch 5A and then A and then B and switch the resolution 2025-4 to B and make A presentation by Mr. Jewett. And then on top of that, number 8 under new business is a resolution 2025-5, which is a fire mini grant resolution. Anybody else have anything they want to add to the agenda this evening? Anything down there?
Just a typo I see in the resolution 2025, so we'll fix the spelling on volunteer before signatures.
Excellent. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
I second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, general public comment. General public comment. We're going to do 2 public hearings, a little bit of question and answer, and then we have this public comment at the beginning, and then we have public comment again at the end. So, any general public comment? Anybody online?
You people online, yes, sir.
Oh, we're up. All right, let's move past this. We'll do it multiple times again. Constitutional officers, county departments, committees, and organizations. We're going to do it abbreviated and quickly. Sheriff, I guess you're up first.
Test 1, 2. Thank you, Alan. Good afternoon. Rather quickly, we had a fairly decent month last month, February, thanks to the snow. We only had 44 criminal investigations at a time, 124 civil process, 778 calls of service, and 94 traffic summonses. At the board's request, the last 2 weeks in October, I did a speed study at the high school doing school hours. We had southbound, we had 1,623 vehicles go through with 743 violations. So it's almost 40. Carter, you're a math man. Is that around 40%? The average speed was 55 miles per hour, and the top speed was 66 miles per hour. And then on the southbound side, the following week, we had 1,347 vehicles come through, 274 violators. Average speed was 53 miles per hour, and the top speed was 67 miles per hour. So it's still an ongoing issue, but any other questions reference the Sheriff's Office speed study?
The first was northbound,
First was southbound.
and the second one was,
Northbound, that's correct.
all right, there you go. All right, that's what we got.
So Eric, we don't have any idea whether they're local people or out of town or what?
We
Right.
went back, your former request, over the last year, we only had 18% of local people violating speed.
Anybody else have anything for the sheriff? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Daniels,
Good afternoon.
welcome.
We're just working through finalizing reassessment data, getting that pushed over to our software systems, and looking forward to hearing from you guys on setting the tax rate.
Any questions for Brian? Brian, thank you. Tilly?
Hello. For HR, last week I did 2 classes / training. I did one with the Essentials of HR Law class and the latest on I-9 compliance update training. And then we also have a couple of job openings on our website. So if you know anyone that's looking for a job, please send them to the website. That's it.
Any questions for Tilly? All right, Jamie Wilkes, thank you, Tilly.
Yes, sir. Real quick. All the reports from the building department, zoning, and E&S are included in your packet, along with the permits issued. And now we're providing you with an inspection report, how many inspections we did. Just in the new system alone, it was 233 inspections. That's not counting E&S and the old system, which we still have permits in. And the only other quick thing is, in your packet, they're starting a new code adoption, and it's laying out the whole schedule on how that'll take effect. And it appears the new code will take effect probably October of '27. That's how, it's a 2-year process. So that's just real quick, and the packet has more information, and if you have any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Wilkes?
No,
Thank you, Jamie. Annette, how's the animal shelter?
Doing good. In March, we had 2 adoption events that were held at the Culpeper PetSmart. We had several interviews. Unfortunately, we could not continue with the young lady that we chose. So Tilly's been helping with that. So we're going to start that search again. Received approval to get the interior of the shelter painted. That is actually scheduled to start tomorrow morning. I want to thank Mooney for setting that up. Weaver Works will be doing a couple of jobs at the shelter, some concrete work and fixing a drain out front. That should be scheduled in the next couple weeks. I want to thank the IT department for setting up Melissa with a laptop so she could do her time and attendance, continued education, getting her W-2s and things like that. Our numbers for March, we had 1 dog safekeeping for the sheriff's office. We had 10 strays, 19 owner surrenders, 12 transferred in. They were completely vetted, ready to adopt out. 5 reclaims, 20 adoptions, and 20 transferred into rescues. At the moment, we have 2 kittens at PetSmart, 1 kitten available for adoption, our resident shelter kitty, Bumble, 7 dogs. 2 of those we were holding for safekeeping for Greene County. They had to do some disinfecting and cleaning their shelter, so we helped them. They actually went home earlier. We have 3 puppies there that are adopted. They're just waiting to go home, 1 stray, and 1 available for adoption.
Good. Questions for Annette? All right, thank you, Annette.
Thank you.
Mr. Barry, how's IT?
Coming right along, we worked with Avinity and the Treasurer's Office to install new payment technology over there at the Treasurer's Office. That is that's online right now. We are hiring for either a sysadmin 1 or 2 position, so if anyone wants to apply for that, please do so. The transfer station phone port over to a cell phone should be complete by tomorrow. We are hoping for no disturbance whatsoever in quality of service. Should be no disruption either. And we will be performing a deep dive into our quotes for server upgrades just to make sure that we're getting what we need in the future for that regarding storage and processing power. We should be ready pretty much here soon.
Good. Getting any applicants for IT?
So far, we have received 4 applicants, sir.
Good. When's it close, Alan?
The positions are open until filled.
Oh, good. All right. Any questions for Alan? All right, Alan, bring it up to Jerry, would you? Or, excuse me, Sean. Apologize.
Good afternoon. For 911 Center, call volume remains a little bit on the light side, which is pleasant. It's good news. Calls for service is about normal. Our radio project, we're pretty much in the closing aspects of it. Mapping is up and running now. Location services, that's a good thing. My staffing, we're fully staffed. I have one new hire will be attending the academy in June. And then community outreach, working with EMS community paramedicine, Tiffany, to provide information to seniors that she visits for our senior call-in program. That was beneficial. We have one new sign-up due to that. And that's all I have.
How many people are you roughly calling on this senior list?
We're up to 6 right now, 7, I believe, right now.
Good. All right. Any other questions for Sean? Jerry?
Hello, how y'all doing? So I thank everyone for coming out yesterday to the Outdoor Rec Center groundbreaking ceremony. Spring sports are underway. It was soccer and baseball opening day last Saturday. And this Saturday we have softball will have their opening day. April 25th, 26th, and 27th we have the 8th annual Hoover Ridge Sheepdog Trials. We'll have over 150 dogs with handlers from 15 different states in Canada staying the night there. April 26th we'll also be having our Hoover Ridge Wool and Wine Festival. I got any questions?
Are we still one of the biggest on the East Coast as far as sheepdogs? Yeah. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, sure are. Any questions for Jerry? Noah, how's EMS?
Good afternoon. March was busy, 170 responses. 9 minutes was our response time. 3 mutual aids. NUA was 7. Really excited to share that Tiffany's been promoted to EMS lieutenant, and she's doing well. We do have 1 EMT vacancy. I've got 6 to 7 applications. We're going through the process for that. Should be filled soon. The RSAF grant and the Gary grant we didn't get awarded for, so I put in for an ambulance and a response vehicle, and every grant we can go for, we try. So we'll keep doing that. And then Madison EMS participated in the Touch a Truck event at the primary school on March 13th. Happy to answer any questions.
So I got one. Please. So Noah, the 50/50 RSAF grant for the ambulance, does that only pertain if you buy it, or could you lease it and get grant money?
Only if you buy it.
Only if you buy it. Okay. I figured that, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Noah? No? Thank you. All right. Worked all the way around. Excellent. Let's move on to consent agenda. We've got minutes from 3/13/2025, minutes from 3/20/2025, and then minutes from 3/25/25.
Mr. Chairman, we need to pull 325 out so I can abstain. I was not here.
All right, what about doing 3/13/25 and then 3/20/25?
Move to approve.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now, minutes 3/25/25.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstain.
There you go. All right, we do have a special appearance, Ms. Ringler from Voltan Transportation. Come on up and talk to us. Ah, go to that one. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak today. My name is Heather Ringler, and I am the program director of a local nonprofit. We're called Voltran. With our name, it kind of stands for Volunteer Transportation. We serve 5 counties, which include Madison, Culpeper, Orange, Rappahannock, and Fauquier. Our organization began back in 2007. Around 2010 is when we transitioned into a nonprofit status. That is a huge blessing as it is, and it opens up a lot of opportunity for us. Within the past few years, we have actually made our way into Madison County. I would say kind of in between COVID and around that time, around 2020, 2021 was when we expanded into Madison. We are currently, in this point in time, working on really growing our volunteer base in Madison County. Fauquier County, where we originated, you can assume that there are a lot of volunteers there since we've been there for so long. Madison, we still have a little bit of work to do. which fortunately for myself, I've been in my role for about a year, but I'm also from Culpeper County, which I would say I've been, quote, more of a local compared to Madison. But with that, it has allowed me, being in Culpeper County for so long and growing up there, I am very familiar with Madison, which has been my focus. I joined the organization back in June, so I'm approaching my first year. And with that, that has allowed me to, sorry, I'm tracking here a little bit. Madison County has been my focus for the past, since I've started in June, so going on a year, because we have the need for transportation constantly rising. When I talk to new volunteers, we kind of really go over in detail the importance of transportation. Unfortunately, not everybody has someone. Some people don't even have a neighbor that can possibly take them somewhere, so it is very essential. Madison County, it has more of a rural area. Not everyone, though there is public transit, is not always accessible to them. So that's when our volunteers truly come into play and the need shows itself. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar, but Mr. Billy Tanner, I call him Madison local celebrity. He had taught in Madison County Public Schools for quite some time. I've known him personally for quite a while as well. I think the volume's going out a little bit. But he is our main person right now that is driving a lot for Madison County. If we will look at our numbers here, last year we drove 80,000 miles. He did quite a bit. He did a very fair share. I count him as 5 drivers in himself because he is so significant. We have, like I said, the rise in need throughout all of our counties, but Madison specifically, there is still a higher need because of our lack of volunteers. So my focus, like I've mentioned a few times, has really been working on growing our volunteer base in Madison County. So if you know anybody that's interested in volunteering, definitely let me know, or if they're still able to, benefit from our services. We have volunteers in the area, but again, the more we're able to acquire in volunteers, the more we're able to serve. A little bit about outside of just my focus in Madison, our mission for our organization is straight to provide reliable transportation, whether it's to medical appointments, essential errands. We ensure we don't really have a specific demographic. We kind of leave the door open for that. There are some organizations that focus on transportation for certain demographics of people. For us, we kind of classify it as older individuals, those that may have a disability, or anyone that has an urgent or critical need. So that kind of allows us to anybody, because we typically, our bottom line is we want to ensure the opportunity for those to be as independent as they can. Whether that's, having someone assist them transportation-wise, then that's our goal. We want to, try to ensure transportation as much as possible within our counties that we serve. We proudly partner with the Regional Transportation Collaborative, RTC, so you say. They also have a call center. We work heavily with them. I say they are the glue of our organization. If you see our information out there and they say, oh, call for a ride, you call that number, it's going to direct you to them. And when that call comes in, they basically assess the need. They're going to get the individual, they're going to know any health situations or any mobility limitations that they may have, or if they use a mobility device such as a walker or wheelchair. And that kind of, allows our volunteers, when they go to pick this person up, they're allowed to have some background information. They're not going in blindly, as you say. And we do have a process. We go through, if a new volunteer wants to join our organization, they go through a sit-down training process and just a general overview and orientation of us and how our process works. A little bit of just our 2024 data. We kind of collected all of this in January. We do it every year with the RTC. They work heavily at acquiring all of our data and getting our stats so that we can see how much we've grown. We've grown a lot within the past few years. Our rides fulfilled for 2024 was 3,318 rides within the spread of our 5 counties. If we equate that to our equitable charitable donation, we're at over $208,000 for 2024, which is pretty significant. Volunteer hours may be ranked a little bit higher in terms of dollar amount per hour, but they are very significant. One ride, whether you're taking someone, to the doctors or to go pick up their pharmacy medication, is going to be impactful. So that's why we're a grassroots organization. A lot of our organizations, counties that we serve, have grown specifically through word of mouth. We have done a lot in terms of enhancing our process, and some things we digitize, some things we leave the old school way and just make it simpler for everybody. But yeah. My information, I do have some information at the back. We have some little palm cards with our info, along with our flyer that has a little bit of our statistics and just general overview of information. But if you have any questions, the volunteer number that's on there is my direct line, so you can call me at any time. Along, if you know anybody that needs a ride, that ride number is also on there. Yep. We got a lot of work to do, which isn't a bad thing. As we enter into hopefully warmer weather soon, I will be at some of the local events here in Madison. If you have any suggestions or would like me to come and speak at anything or possibly attend an event that you may have, that is very, very needed for us, just for our continued growth and expansion. For example, at the end of the month, I will be at one of the churches in Fauquier County. They're hosting a whole senior summit event, and it's a great opportunity. The more opportunities to be able to get the word out for a nonprofit like us, the better. Because again, our volunteers are who we and how we continue to be able to do what we do. So, thank you very much. If you guys have any questions, definitely feel free to let me know.
Do you have any questions for Ms. Ringler? No. Thank you, Ms. Ringler.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Public hearings, polling precinct location change and consolidation. Mr. Weekly, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you may recall, back on February 13, 2025, the Board of Supervisors received information from the electoral board and the registrar for the consideration of consolidating the Grays Mill and Wolftown polling locations. At that meeting, we received information from the electoral board. Some of that information that provided was voting information, financial data, which was the basis as a consideration for polling consolidation and location change. The proposed consolidation would move the Grays Mill and Wolftown polling locations to the Rose Park United Methodist Church. It's our understanding the original location for the Wolftown precinct, that lease was going to expire. Wolftown needed a new precinct, and then the analysis of the Grays Mill became a part of that. So that's why it's change in location being proposed as well as consolidation. After that meeting, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to advertise for a public hearing, which has been scheduled here for tonight, so you can receive feedback from the public. Ms. Turner or myself, or a combination thereof, has received several either emails or letters or petitions. I believe we have captured those, all of those in the packet, maybe even some that was uploaded yesterday or this morning. So you do have that. So, Mr. Chairman, this is really the public hearing for the board to hear the input. I want to emphasize there's a draft, so it doesn't assume any action. Should the board wish to take action, there has been a draft ordinance prepared by Mr. Wright, our county attorney, and that is all. Oh, there's a draft precinct map too. I appreciate the registrar having drawn up. Should the board and the public want to be able to see what a new precinct map would look like, again, that is all staff comments unless the board has any direct questions for us.
Anybody have any comments from the board before we go to the public? All right. I'd like to open up the public hearing for the consolidation of Grays Mill and Wolftown's voting precinct.
And Mr. Chairman,
Excuse me. Yeah,
if you could state your preference, we have the flexibility. If you want folks to come to the podium, or if you wish for Mr. Berry to rotate microphones, you just let us know your pleasure, sir.
Let's start with the podium, and then we'll move to the passing around microphones.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bernstein, are you first? No. Oh, excuse me. All right, please take that one on back there. Yes, please. Back in the corner, Alan.
Thank y'all for being here. And
we at Graves Mill, well, I turned in a petition. I think I had 42 names on it to keep our polling place in Graves Mill. And I have some old ballot boxes as evidence, I guess you'd say. Okay.
That was Mr. Lillard. Got it. All right. Who's next? Alan, would you take the mic over there? We're going to do the sitting down thing.
Hello, Board. Appreciate you. My name is Gregory Wustenhagen. I'm a member of the council that operates Graves Chapel in Graves Mill. We believe that the cultural identity, if you will, of Graves Mill is better served by maintaining that polling place. And we have voted to waive the fee that we were charging for voting at Graves Chapel. So if the board decides to retain that polling place, that cost will go away if that's a factor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Who else would like to talk about the polling place? Yeah, by all means, Ms. Bernstein.
Good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Mitch Bernstein. I've appeared before you before on this issue. I want to go into a little bit more depth, but not too much, because I'm standing here and I have a strange sense. I want to quote Yogi Berra. Okay? It's deja vu all over again. We were here 3 years ago, and that was because the electoral board and the registrar wanted to dissolve and ask you to dissolve Graves Mill voting precinct. And it was unanimously rejected by the board. Okay, there was concerns about the cultural significance. There was a matter of principle, which is what Ms. Hoffman, I can quote her for having said that. And there were issues about it being, I'm losing my notes here, sorry. Basically, the economic impact, such as it was represented, if it was needed to buy another machine as a spare, it was $10,000 then. It was the dialogue and the consensus that $10,000 was a small price to pay in order to maintain the historical significance of the Graves Mill voting precinct. But yet, here we are again, 3 years later. And this time there's a new context for why it has to happen, and a new set of economics presented to you. And it's, you know, talking to a lot of my fellow Graves Mill residents and voters, it's as if the county, I don't mean the county, but the registrar's office, the electoral board, whomever is behind this, is regarding our precinct more as a nuisance, because it's so small, rather than a reminder, a proud reminder of the deep and rich history that resides and is part of the Graves Mill community and Graves Mill voting precinct. So, Mr. Jackson, at the February 13th meeting, you asked the question very pointedly, and I quoted you. I went over it 3 or 4 times to make sure I got it accurate. You said, "We tried this before. What's different now?" And nobody ever directly engaged with you on that question. But I'd like to answer it. The answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing is different than what we were doing, you were doing, and considering 3 years ago. I want to cover a few points about the value of the Graves Mill voting precinct, both historically as well as to the community and another constituency that nobody's spoken about yet. Okay. I think we can stipulate, nobody disagrees that the Grays Mill voting precinct has a lot of historic significance to it. And that was, Mr. Smith is not here tonight, but he presented a fairly detailed presentation back in 2022. I have resubmitted that to you as part of my comments so that it's in the record of this, and it has to do with the first election in February 2nd, 1789. I know we've been through that. That's in the record. That's one thing to point out to you. Another thing is the historical significance of the mill. The mill is where the voting originally took place back in the day, and I'm talking 200 years ago day. I mean, this goes back pretty far. The grist mill, which is the formal name of it, as well as the miller's house, are both designated as on the Virginia Landmarks Registry, and they're also on the National Register of Historic Places. That's federal, maintained by the Department of Interior. They're both on both of those registries. Grays Mill Historical Park, which was engineered and spearheaded by Doug Graves, who is a eighth generational direct descendant of Thomas Graves, who established the mill back in the late 1700s. And he put that together. It is now a Virginia Cultural Heritage Site. So there's a lot going on there. And Doug Graves himself has submitted for the record, and I do see Mr. Weekly was uploaded yesterday or today, thank you, that I urge you to read. I'm not going to go through it in detail, about the rich character of the life in the community of Grays Mill. The one thing that was an omission that kind of puzzles me is at the last meeting, the February 13th meeting, the assistant county attorney who spoke at the time urged you all to reach out to the Historical Society about this. And just to use his words, to preempt any kinds of trouble or opposition, I guess. And that's fair enough, okay. And then at the end of the meeting, Mr. Jackson, you said, well, who's going to take care of this? And I couldn't hear, it wasn't there. But somebody was tasked with doing that. It never happened. I spoke last night to Max Lacey, who's the president of the Historical Society. Nobody has approached him. And I just don't know if it's because people think it's a done deal and you really don't have to go out and, gather support and gather more input. And I don't want to ascribe, nefarious, motives to this. I don't know why that happened, but it didn't. And so the historical part is almost being downplayed or ignored, as the case may be. The second point is that the voting precinct, besides its intrinsic historical value, has a great significance to the Grays Mill community, to the peoples. And I was pleased to notice Ms. Eanes acknowledged that it's a very high participation precinct. Small, but high participation. And at one point, we actually had 100% participation. And she shared with me some statistics from the last two election cycles. And for the general election back in November, Grays Mill came in right at the county average. So we kept up with our fellow precincts. But going back to the dual primary last June, we towered over every other precinct. And just to give you those statistics from in the total turnout as a percentage, the other precincts ranged from 13% to 18%. Grays Mill was 28%. And then if you get down to election day turnout, which is, I think, more at the core of the money that we're going to talk about, we trounced them. It was the other precincts, each were 9%, 10%, or 11% turnout on election day. Grays Mill was 23%, twice as much as any other precinct for primaries. We take it seriously there. We take voting seriously. And one other thing to be pointed out, it wasn't brought up this time, but it was brought up at the prior hearing, how remote and isolated this was, and that Ms. Dean's office had to borrow the sheriff's radio. That's going to be a thing of the past because Firefly is coming. And the chapel itself has signed up for that, and there will be fast, free communications. That's not a factor anymore. And you have the petition. So the community is pretty resilient. And I don't want to get into the details of the flood, but if any of you were there to see the devastation 30 years ago in 2 months, it wiped out everything. It wiped out culture. And yet, the community came together, reestablished the post office, reestablished the voting precinct, reestablished the holiday party, the Christmas party that we have every year, reorganized all of the roadside cleanups. I don't know of any other communities that get together to do that. Maybe, I hope there are. But we do, and we do it twice a year. So that's all part of what it means to live in Graves Mill. And the voting is a very important part of it. And the third constituency that nobody has really referred to, and maybe I'm off base on this, but I don't think so. And, you know, we look at why is the county why is the precinct so small? Well, the reason is because a lot of the folks who used to live there were folks who lived in the mountains, okay? When it was more of a thriving community in Graves Mill. The mill was actually operational to the 1940s, I think. And in the 1930s, a lot of people were driven out by the park to establish it. Houses were burned, etc. Their descendants, many of them live not in Graves Mill necessarily, but certainly in Madison County. And this is the voting precinct, is a connection to their cultural heritage, where their ancestors voted before they were unceremoniously evicted from their homes. So that's another consideration to take into account, I think. So that's what Graves Mill has going for it, the precinct. Let's look at the other side of the ledger. Okay. I spoke 6 weeks ago. And I made the point, hopefully you'll remember, there's nothing urgent. There's no imminent costs, capital costs, that are attributed to the Graves Mill precinct. And I know that was being done as a matter of being proactive, and I accept that. It's good governance, but it's uncertain. Mr. Smith said we anticipate, and some of his written material said we anticipate that the Virginia Board of Elections from Richmond is going to ask us or tell us we have to replace our equipment. Not this budget cycle, not next budget cycle, maybe the third budget cycle. So where's the rush? Why would you get rid of this cultural gem, okay, on something that may or may not happen? And there's another wrinkle on that we talked about, was alluded to, and that is that Mr. Smith said at your meeting, if we had to do all over, start from scratch, we'd have 4 precincts. So we'd consolidate everything. We'd have them voting at the 4 schools in Madison, and it would just make more sense. It'd be centrally located, whatever his other rationale. That is also something that is on their own agenda. In their the notes from their last meeting, new business, was to develop a 4 or 5 precinct map with polling places in the primary all the schools to offer as an option in anticipation of decertification of existing equipment. Well, if that has any legs and that goes forward, you're not going to have to spend $16,000 on Graves Mill, okay? It's going to be part of, you'll probably spend 4 or 5, however many they're going to be, and that's what your capital budget's going to be, but it's not going to be Graves Mill. And right now, we're being singled out, okay? But, you know, if we lost it, if we lost our voting precinct because everybody in the county was being reconsolidated, okay, don't like it, but at least we're being treated fairly. We're not being treated fairly right now. So that brings us down to the last possible rationale that was offered, and that was the fixed costs of these elections. And it was a grand total of $1,268 per election. Well, in a $50 million budget, that is too small to even be lost in the rounding. It is less than 1% of 1% of the budget, okay? But if you think that's significant, and it really matters that much money to do it, you've already heard that the chapel has agreed to waive its fee. That's $200 per the rental fee. And I have spoken to a number of people who are all very concerned about maintaining this. And we have, I can tell you that if you're going to do this, we would volunteer to work as election officials with no compensation whatsoever. We'd probably have three or four shifts. That's how many people would be willing to do this. Now, we don't want to take money out of anybody's pocket. We hope you'll keep it. But if that's what needs to be done, the only cost that would be left would be $358, okay, per election. You know, and as Pete Elliott volunteered last year, he was going to pay $1,300. I'd pay the $358 if that's what we need to keep it going. So I'd just like to conclude by reading from Doug's letter, because he was very eloquent in the end of it, and I think it's worth you hearing in public rather than seeing it on paper. And Doug wrote, "Next year marks a significant milestone for our country, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This historic occasion will be celebrated nationally and locally, drawing attention to the importance of preserving symbols and institutions that connect us to our past." And he said, "With due respect to the Madison County Board of Supervisors, I pose the following question. Do you wish to end a long-standing institution, quite likely older than Madison County itself, for what some might characterize as a relatively small financial savings? The Graves Mill voting precinct is significant not only for its historical value, but also for its role in historical commemoration, especially as we approach the 250th anniversary of this great country in 2026. This precinct is even more important to the residents of Graves Mill as it is inextricably intertwined with the history of their community. I respectfully request that the Board of Supervisors consider the intrinsic historic value of the Graves Mill voting precinct rather than focusing solely on financial matters when deciding its fate. Eliminating this historically significant precinct would be a disservice to the citizens of Madison County, particularly those of Graves Mill, who cherish it as a valuable part of their community." One more sentence. "I urge you to honor the historical importance of the Graves Mill voting precinct and ensure its preservation for future generations by allowing it to continue operation in its current location and format." So I endorse that, Doug's words, but my sentiments as well. So if there are any questions anybody on the board would like to present to me, I'd be delighted to answer. But if not, I appreciate your consideration. I really do hope that this is not a done deal and that you'll consider the merits of getting rid of Graves Mill, abolishing it, and keeping it alive until it becomes necessary to deal with the financial impacts of it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Yes, sir. Yeah, I have to get him a microphone.
We began this meeting facing that flag over there and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. To me, what the flag represents is the genius of the framers of this country and the Constitution of the United States. I took an oath once upon a time to support and defend that Constitution. And as I look at the framers of this country, and as I read the documents that are so hallowed, I see a lot in there about representation, but I don't see anything in there about efficiency. You know, we live in a day when there's a lot of concern for government efficiency, and perhaps a lot of that is indeed very important. But I do not believe that we should sacrifice representation for efficiency. And I look at the community of Graves Mill. Now, mind you, I live on Graves Mill Road, but I'm not technically inside Graves Mill, even though I'm a member of the chapel board. But I've known those folks in that community for a long time. And I feel like they should be represented by the board in this matter by keeping that precinct alive, because it's a part of their cultural heritage and that of Madison County and of their cultural identity. Just my 2 cents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Other public comment? Anybody else? Anybody else? Michelle, you have a comment?
Thank you. Hey, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment and clarify some of the facts that have been gone over. We're certainly not trying to single out Graves Mill by any means. We feel in a time, especially as you guys know, at budget season, when the county itself is so scrutinized for overspending and finances and things like that, that we felt responsible, especially after creating this chart, which was requested of us, to bring information forward about cost of voting. Cost for election day voting at Graves Mill, just again, we've gone over this once, but just to reiterate and clarify a little bit, in the November 24 general election, so the last presidential, it cost roughly $58 per vote at Graves Mill precinct. Going back to the June primary, which is the one that Mr. Bernstein was correct, did have the highest turnout in the county. The cost per vote there was almost $98 per voter. That compared to the next closest one is Etlin, coming in at $11 in November and $30 in June, and everything significantly gets less after that because the numbers are larger. A couple other things that I did just want to discuss. Virginia Code Section 24.2-1, 24.1 is going to prevent us from being able to take no rent pay or to not pay rent at the Graves Mill precinct. That was a code that came out in 2022, I believe, and it says that we can't accept contributions, which free rent is going to be considered contribution. So we'd be violating the law if we were able to do that. I think it's a super generous offer, and internet will be a great addition up there, but we are going to have to pay rent. I think the only time we could get out of something like that is the Historical Society, because you all do own the property. But in a case like this, it can't be gifted to you. The letter to the Historical Society that we were asked about, we left that February meeting and created that letter, and I have an email with board approval from February 18th. We either mailed it that day or the next day to the same place that we mail our rent checks. So I'm not sure why it didn't get there, but on our portion that was created and sent. And I do have email proof at least of where the letter was created and sent to my electoral board for approval. Mr. Bernstein did note that nothing has changed from 3 years ago when we approached this again. I do feel like that is a little bit different because when we came before you guys 3 years ago, it was something that we discussed because of population, low turnout, things like, not low turnout, but low numbers. The main difference here that I see from a financial standpoint, and I know that's not everything that we want to talk about, but is that new equipment is coming. It's not necessarily decertification. That could happen sooner than 2027 that we're looking at, but our equipment will be 10 years old in the year of 2027. So if we are able to use, without the state decertifying prior to that, what we have, that 10-year mark is lifespan. And as you guys know, Alan can probably attest to, technology is not very often known to last 10 years. Your laptop's probably not 10 years old. Your cell phone's probably not 10 years old. So we're lucky that we're able to use what we have for that amount of time. But the purchase of scanners themselves, which is the other point I wanted to make. When we talked about this 3 years ago, we were talking about potentially buying an extra scanner because we had to report by precinct. We needed some more equipment in here for early voting. That's one piece that costs about $10,000. When we do all this, we're buying a scanner and a touch writer, which is our ADA machine, so we're looking at closer to $20,000, not 10. We're also potentially looking at 2 iPads, which we use for check-in. That's $3,000 to $4,000, and anything else that could go with that. So it's not just $10,000. It's 20, 24, something like that per precinct. And it's not a one-time fix either. 10 years after that, you're probably doing the same thing again. If it lasts 10 years, hopefully it does. But it's not one time and it's done. None of this is ever going to last that long. And Lord forbid, in between that, 5 years through, the state says we're not using paper ballots anymore. We're switching to this system. Something else you would need then, so you wouldn't get your lifespan out of that. Just a couple examples that I want to point out so that you guys see the whole picture of everything. One other statement that I would like to make, I know that we were pointing towards how Graves Mill has such great turnout. When early voting started, we got less than 10 voters from Graves Mill that came into my office and voted early. They all, kind of stuck to the Graves Mill precinct. When we voted in November, we had 47% of the Graves Mill turnout vote in my office prior to Election Day with me and my staff. So there were 91 registered voters in Graves Mill, 38 voted on Election Day, and 34 voted prior to Election Day with me and my staff. And there was 72 turnout. So out of the 91 registered voters, 72 voters turned out, giving you a 79% turnout, 42% on Election Day, out of the whole number. And out of just the vote turnout, it was 47%. If we look at the June numbers, we had 21 voters on Election Day and 4 voters early voting, but primaries are much lower. So, the turnout is great. Of course, it's easy to meet higher turnout numbers when you have much less. We're hitting, over 1,000 in bigger precincts and things like that. So that's part of what generates that greater turnout number. But when almost 50% of them are voting in this office before Election Day, they're coming out and voting. It's not like it's just going to the polling place that day. And then another point, and I know I'm hanging up on cost a lot here, but I feel like that's my job as a county employee to focus on the costs and give you the information, and you guys can make the decision that you want to make with that. Everything costs more. When I started this job, my budget was significantly less than what it is now. A lot of that is because we've gone to paper ballots and we have early voting, and mail costs more. It costs almost $1, just to send an absentee ballot out, things like that. Those costs aren't going anywhere. They're only going up. I mean, you know that from the grocery store and everything else in everyday life. The cost of my office is not going down either. I mean, if we eliminate this precinct, it's not making a huge change to cost, but it is going to be one less that doesn't have that increase all the time, essentially. And I think that's about all I have. Do you guys have any questions for me? Anything that you want clarification on?
Anybody? Anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want to come off as the villain here. Don't think that we're singling out Graves Mill or trying to do anything. We love the precinct. Our workers up there are amazing. It's always been, family. Everyone's wonderful to work with, very educated. They know exactly what they're doing. We're so thankful for them, but I do feel like, again, as a county employee, it's my job to bring this information to you all. We've done our due diligence. We have all the information. We keep very detailed records of turnout and things like that, and just want to be able to provide that information for you guys to make the decision that you want.
Just a quick question. How much paper ballots are still legal to have, so if a machine went down, they could use paper ballots? Is that
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. There's actually an emergency slot on the front of it, so if the machine were to stop working, which has happened a time or two here or there over the time that we've had them, you just put it in that slot, or it actually happened at Kriglersville for a really short period before we could get a new one there a couple years ago. Those voters just wanted to wait with their ballot until the new machine came, but the emergency slot, you can put it in, and then when we get a machine back up and going, we can feed it through for you.
Okay, so, and you said, I thought I heard you say that paper ballots may be a thing of the past eventually, is that right?
I don't think they're going anywhere.
Okay,
I really don't, but I think when Diana was here in 2017 and we immediately had to go to paper ballots, she thought that the DREs, which were like touch screens, which we had back then, I mean, she would have told you that they weren't going anywhere anytime soon. And then legislation happened, a law got changed, and you had to have them immediately, and the county had to panic and, you know, spend almost $200,000 on equipment that we had to get in and get working in 4 weeks' time.
And one last question, I don't know what the rent is at the church, or do you know that number?
200.
If, it can't be free, I heard you say that, but could it be $1?
It has to be the same. It can't be like a discount compared to what you're paying everyone else. And Hannon may have better information on that. Looking at the code section, we could look into that and make sure. But when that law came out, like, you can't walk into the precinct and bring cookies. I mean, you can't do a lot of weird things that I don't think were necessarily thought about when it was written. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions for Lauren? All right. Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if we may, Mr. Berry, can you check online? I know we've been texting, but of the three people that are there, is there anyone that wishes to make public comment for this public hearing portion?
Just posted it in the chat around 30 seconds ago. So far, no one has responded, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Bernstein?
Yes, I know this,
You know, keep it-
I
keep
know
it
this is not a
brief.
debate,
Yes,
but I
sir.
appreciate just to respond. And Lauren, I don't think you're a villain. Really, I understand what you're doing. But my plea to you is, why do you need to do it now? Again, there's no money at stake here, okay? There's $1,500, there are ways around, maybe they could take the money and make a donation to the county, to the general coffers, not connected with it. The same thing with any volunteer election workers. If you have to pay them, do you have to pay the election workers? Yes. You do. Same thing. Well, we could get the checks and then just deposit them, make a donation to the county's general fund. But that's not the point. This is small. The big point is, I understand at some point these machines are going to have to be replaced, whatever the reason. Okay. There's going to be notice from the Board of Elections in Virginia. It's not going to happen overnight. Okay, there'll be a lead time. All this is in the future. Why on God's green earth are you wanting to do this now? It's just, yeah, there's convenience because there's the Wolftown is sort of the cover. Okay, oh, well, we're changing locations at Wolftown. Let's consolidate Grays Mill into it now. You can do that next year. You can do it in 2 years. You can do it in 3 years. You just take one sentence out of the ordinance, okay? And when the time comes, you have another ordinance that says we're hereby consolidating it. And all of my arguments would probably, go into the bucket then. Would probably wouldn't be valid anymore. Hopefully they would about historical. But we're not at that point. Okay, we're just not there now. So I'm imploring you to put this on hold. Okay, it's a valid presentation by the registrar. I get it, but there's no urgency. There's no immediate need to do this. So, thank you.
Any other public comment? Anybody else? Anybody else? Nothing online? Yes, sir. By all means.
Good evening. My name is Brian Mitchell. I'm a member of the Electoral Board. I'm sorry that our chairman can't be here tonight. I just wanted to make one technical point, aside from this debate entirely, and that is that you do need to take action to move the polling place in Wolftown. Whether you consolidate or not, don't overlook the fact that we do have to change that polling place because the current polling place has declined to renew their lease. So just be careful to take care of at least that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Any public comment? All right, back to the board. Sure, sure.
I think they call it an arm's length transaction,
For 24.2-124.1, there haven't been any cases on it because it is fairly new. It is pretty clear, though, that they want, General Assembly's made it clear that they don't want really any money being involved in elections. And the phrasing of it is State Board, Department of, each electoral board and all offices of general register shall not solicit, accept, use, or dispose of any money, grants, property, or services given by a private individual or non-governmental entity for the purposes of funding voter education and outreach programs, voter registration programs, or any other expense incurred in the conduct of the elections. So it's written fairly broadly. They're trying to make a bright line rule, I think. I do agree that it would start looking strange if we had different, if you got 10 districts and one is less than the others, it looks strange, and it is strange because this is why, particularly given the context of what we know in this one. That's not to say that there's not creative ways to figure out cost reductions, but this wouldn't be the one. It's a generous offer. And then there is an attorney general opinion. It was somebody, the U.S. Alliance for Election Excellence was going to offer $80 million in funding to local election departments throughout the U.S. For equipment, training, coaching, and modernization services. Attorney General opinion said, hey, that's a no-go. That would fall foul of this 24.2-124.1. So anyways, I just wanted to answer that question for the
Any
board.
questions for Hamden on the legal aspects of these things? Thank you, Amy. All right. Who has comments, thoughts, motion? What would y'all like to do here?
I have two thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
The biggest issue, because I did vote to keep this open a few years back, my biggest concern at that time was disenfranchisement. And because we now have essentially an election season, 6-7 weeks, plus very easy access to mail-in ballots, I don't think the issue of disenfranchisement is there anymore. The other, I guess, argument, this is coming from a financial standpoint, you know, we're trying to close a $2 million budget deficit, more than likely have to raise taxes, so every dollar counts this year. And I think those are some things we need to revisit. That's my opinion. I just wanted to state it. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Let's see. I was born and raised in this county. I lived in Wolftown for probably 4 or 5 years until old man Jim Kite informed us that Jimmy was getting, his son Jimmy was getting married, so we had to move down to Uno. And then the rest of the time I spent at General Bobby Jenkins's house in Graves Mill. His mother took care of us kids while my folks were working. So, and I also drove a school bus for 2 years up Graves Mill and turned around in the creek beyond the Jenkins's house. So Wolftown and Graves Mill have always been, you know, very dear to my heart. That said, you know, this polling place, in my opinion, does not define Graves' Mill. You all have already mentioned tonight how you get together, the chapel is there. The chapel at this point defines Graves' Mill, in my opinion, and your Christmas parties and all that kind of stuff. And historically, when I lived in Uno for a little while, the Uno store was open, you know, and when it was a post office. I was reading a letter that my dad sent from the University of Richmond to my grandparents in Etlin when he was in college, and it was addressed to Piola Mills. Okay, Piola. We had stores and we had post offices in Piola, Nethers. We had stores in Arota. I don't know about it. Where was the post office? Well, the second store. Etlin post office. All these places have come and gone for a reason. So I just don't feel like Graves' Mill is defined by this polling spot. And I've always felt like Wolftown and Graves' Mill were one as a community. I mean, before Doug moved away, how many times would I go into the Wolftown store and sit around the stove in there, and Doug was there most of the time, okay? So Wolftown, Graves' Mill, to me, is it. I put them together like a hand in a glove. So we have a staff recommendation. Also Doug's letter, it's talking about the Graves Mill, grist mill, served as far more than a facility for processing grain. It was the heart of the community, the staff of life. True. And the mill is no more. It hasn't been for a long time. And yet, Graves Mill did not lose its identity. And the intrinsic historic value of Graves Mill, that's not going to be lost here, in my opinion, either. We have been struggling with budget the last 5 weeks. And we have a valid presentation by our registrar, and also I have in my notes here, where is it? That the registrar and the electoral board recommended, yeah, there it is, recommendation. The registrar and the Madison County Electoral Board recommends the consolidation of 2 voting precincts, Graves Mill and Wolftown, into one combined precinct. So I don't, it's rare when I go against recommendations of staff and all, so that's all I got to say.
Judge?
Mr. Bernstein, just FYI, on the 25th, I sent an email to Max stating we had to cancel a couple of meetings because of the snowstorms. So I just want to I did send him something asking him that this was brought up in a board meeting and to comment on it. And it was with 3 or 4 other long list items we had. So I know that I had mentioned it to him. So I'm sure the registrar's office also probably sent a letter out as well. I think we talked about disenfranchised voters. We had let's see, where is it here? I had how many voters came into the office and how many voted at the church, and it was 40-60% one way or the other. But I have a feeling that has a lot to do with how important people felt that the election was. They want to make sure their votes got in. They wanted, snowstorms, whatever. They want to make sure that they came in and got their vote in. So I'm thinking you could disenfranchise people, the people that did stay and vote for that election. There was 38 people that were there on that day of the election, and they might be disenfranchised. They may not vote in the next election because of that, or some of them might not, because they don't want to go 6 miles one way or all the way into the office here. I do think the rich history, tradition, and cultural identifications you have with a certain spot is very important to me, and I can feel how important it is to the people that live up in Graves Mill. So I, for one, I know it's not a lot of money, and I would look for other ways. In the budget, we're all very serious about the budget here. We all are looking at every single line item. But on something like this, I think that the rich history and the tradition that you guys have up there at Graves Mill is why I would vote to keep it up there at least for the next year or two, unless things change. So that's the way I'm going to go on that.
Anybody else? I'll throw in my 2 cents. Mr. Bernstein, you asked, why do it now? And I agree with you. I don't think much has changed since we talked about it 3 or 4 years ago. It's going to be the exact same argument in 3 or 4 years more. The numbers of people going in are frankly going down, which is unfortunate. You certainly don't want to see development up there that would bring a whole lot more population. You don't want that at all. The cost of voting really is trivial. It generally is. We've been grueling over the budget. Grueling. It is terrible. We are looking at it and looking at doing a 2-cent tax increase, and that weighs on every one of us sitting here and all the staff that's employed by Madison County, because they know who pays the bills. The problem is and on top of that, the intent of the board up here, this was the last thing on our radar. The last thing on our radar until it was brought to us by the electoral board as information. I did think it was a recommendation originally, and Jim clarified that and said it wasn't. It was just information. But here we are. Numbers are going down. We appreciate the significance of the history up there. And now with Doug Graves' letter talking about how it was in the grist mill and not even in the church where we think all positive about, that kind of changes things again. I agree with Cardi 100%. The identity of Graves Mill is certainly not voting at Graves Mill 2 or 3 times a year. There's 362 other days in the year that go to that. The cost, that's fairly trivial. This is gonna keep circling around and around and around. And y'all come back out, and I think it speaks so well of the Graves Mill community. Here everybody is. Y'all don't come out here very much. But this is one that, it's just a matter of time. If we don't do it now, another board's gonna do it here in a couple of years. Maybe then we'll hear the same arguments again. Chuck will be writing about it, and Gracie and all of this. But it's either now or later. All we're doing is just Band-Aid it. It's either pull the Band-Aid off or just pull it real, real, real slow, and we all can agonize over this together. That's all I've got. What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve ordinance 2025-2 to change the precinct location and consolidate.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. And there you go. Thank y'all. Next, we have a public hearing on the calendar year 25 equalization of tax rate. Mr. Weekly, would you like to start, and then we go to Jim?
Sure.
Please.
Also see our commissioner in the house. So as you know, and the board has mentioned, and I'll kind of speak to the board and to the general public also, the county hired, we put out an RFP and wound up settling on Wingate Appraisals to do our assessment. I think every 5 or 6 years you're required by state statute to do a reassessment. We do not have staff that does an assessment. Some counties choose to have an assessor's office. We do not. I think this assessment roughly costs around $300,000. If you employ staff, you're probably looking at that annually. So that was our baseline moving forward. This wasn't done, I think the last time was around 2018 or 2019, so it has been a few years, and you can imagine the market swings that's occurred even before COVID period. So what we've learned since the reassessment, they did ask for an extension, so that's what pushed us to like the first week or second week in March to get the books closed out, so Mr. Daniel at the Commissioner's office could get us some values, which effectively, what is the equalized rate? State code requires the county to equalize the rate, and there's that 1% threshold. So it's not that you would choose if otherwise, but it is required, so I want to mention that to the general public. Mr. Daniel, our commissioner, did give us a value that the equalized rate would be 49 cents per hundred. That is the real estate rate that I'm referring to. Currently, that rate is at 74 cents, and that was what I would say the pre-assessment rate. So part of the requirement is the Board of Supervisors to hold a public hearing. Normally, when we advertise tax rates, it's everything from real estate to personal property to there's a list of taxes. This hearing is just solely for your real estate rate. There will be another public hearing, it was recently advertised for April 22nd, that will consider all those rates. So the purpose here tonight, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, is to consider the equalized rate. There is a resolution prepared, should you wish to take action. And again, that rate, effective rate now was at 49 cents per hundred. I think it's fair to say overall, and Mr. Jewett has a great presentation here momentarily, I believe you all are gonna put up on the screen. Values are around 51% increases. That's kind of an average. There may have been some that were more, some are less. But that is the reason to equalize to that effect. So, Mr. Chairman, that is all staff has prepared, unless you have additional questions. Again, we have attorney, we have our commissioner on standby.
Brian, do you have anything to add? All right, anybody have any questions for staff? All right, let's go to Mr. Jewett's presentation, and then we can we'll go through that real quick, and then we'll also go to some discussion, then public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me, and Supervisor Dawson is going to assist me in coming down here and doing a presentation from the floor.
Mr. Jewett, do you need a laser pointer, sir, for any purpose? Okay. All right. It is bright, so be careful.
Take down a UFO with that.
Would you like my seat?
No, I'm going to stand. That's why I wanted to get up here. So we're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire.
Mr. Adams.
Let's leave that off. Well, I think that's what the pointer. If you want it brighter, we can think about it.
No, I don't want it brighter.
See what you got. Okay.
Oh, look
perfect.
at that thing.
Perfect.
Oh, no, look at
Oh,
this.
let's take that off. We
It
don't want
looks
to do
like,
that.
looks like a disco.
Sorry, we don't want to do that. That's the Spencer version for some of you who used to go to the mall.
That's for the Dancing with the Stars version. There we go. Okay.
Sorry, sir.
On. Okay, folks, thanks for coming out. You know, we really like for people to come out and participate in all these meetings. And this is what we've been grappling with this year. We do know that there was an initial significant public backlash to when the reevaluations came out, and that's understandable. And we're going to try to walk you through more of the code and some of the numbers. But real estate valuation assessment in 2025, we are required, a county our size, under 50,000, has to do this every 5 or 6 years. We have chosen to do it every 6 years because it costs $300,000 to do this. And we don't want to spend any more money than we have to over a period of time. But under the code, we have to establish fair market value, and also this helps to ensure equitable tax burden based upon property valuations. This is conducted by a certified reassessment company that we selected based upon recommendations from other localities. Mr. Daniels, our Commissioner of Revenue, oversees this process. He's done a really good job, and he's provided me with a lot of the numbers for today's presentation. We started back last year, about the middle of last year, and I believe it was officially finished in January. Is that correct, Mr. Daniels, as far as the actual valuations? Okay. So it's over. All right. Can I have the next slide, please? All right. Obviously, property values went up. And as you'll see, the average increase in property values was 50%. The median increase was 54%. Now, I just had this discussion with my students in analytics this week. What's the difference between average and median, or median? Well, when you look at the median, you're talking about the point where half of the properties grew at a slower rate than 54%. Above that, half of the properties grew faster than 54%. So I think that's something to look at, particularly when we look at an average, because an average can be misleading. Now, we have some modes up there, and these are the most frequent increases by categories that we had. 60%, 59, 67, 54, and 56. So you can see why the average could be somewhat misleading. Advance, please. All right. We are required under Virginia law to equalize or take the total value of the property and set a rate that would, from an aggregate standpoint of all the county's property, not exceed more than 1% for a new tax rate. So since our property values went up an average of 50%, we had to drop our old tax rate of 74 cents a hundred down to 49 cents a hundred. Now, here's one of the issues with that. Because individual properties were reassessed at varying rates, some folks' valuations went up higher than others. Even with the equalization rate from our aggregate county property value, some folks will still see a slight increase in their taxes even at equalization. Next slide, please. Okay, this is where we get into what's happened. As we all know, inflation has gone up significantly. In the year 2021, I think it was up at a rate at one time almost annual rate of 22%. It ended up coming down to 8%. The CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, averaged 5% a year from 22 to 24. County revenue increases were going up 4.5%. That was not a result of tax increase rates. It was just a result of new construction activity, economic activity, sales tax, et cetera, et cetera. Our county spending increases have been held to 4.96%. So we have been able, despite inflation, to hold the rate of county spending below the CPI. Did I shut this thing off? No. Our 2026 budget projections, because of decreased economic activity, we're looking at a 0.03% decrease in our revenue. We had initial operating budget / capital budget requests from the various departments this year that totaled 8.9%. And through significant reduction of about $1 million or more, our spending increase will be about 4.4% this year, again, still keeping it under that long-term trend line of inflation. The problem is, though, is that things just aren't getting less expensive. As the registrar was explaining, and we're going to talk about what we're going to need to do about that in the future. Looking at where we are right now, in order to balance the budget, which we have to do, and not to deplete our fund balance, which is our reserve savings account, and not to go into any more short-term debt, which we don't want to do, we're looking at up to maybe a 3 cents per 100 increase in the real estate property tax rate. And that would give us a revenue increase of 3.7%, which is still slightly below what our rate of spending increase is. Next slide, please. All right. I'm going to go to this last bullet point first. Can't stand that thing. This is why people were so upset when they got their real estate assessment. I took an example, and we actually have one of these, but this was actually one of the properties I own, 1,300 square foot single-story house, fairly common in Madison County. And it was assessed at $215,900 the last time the assessment was done in around 2019. I've been paying $1,597.66 in yearly property tax. My assessment, the new value of that home, went up, I believe, 52%, and now it's assessed at $329,400. If the property taxes on that house matched its increase in value, my property taxes would be $2,428.44. And that's why people were so upset. They were like, my goodness, look at what happened to my property. That's what's going to happen to my taxes. And of course, we know from the explanation that under Virginia law, that doesn't happen. So I went ahead and looked at some of the scenarios. If we take the new value of that house and we apply the equalization rate, and to do that under an easy way is just to put it at 0.0049, then what's going to happen is my new property tax will be $1,614.06. That's what, about $15, $16 increase? If we were to increase our tax rate to 50 cents, my new tax would be $16.47. 51 cents a hundred, it would be $16.89. And at 52 cents per hundred, which is the max that we're advertising at, it would be 17. Well, I don't want to kill the chairman with this laser pointer. I think it died, thank goodness. My tax would be $1,713. Comparing that back to what I have been paying, we're looking at about a $116 increase. Now, this is the first thing I want to state. In no way am I trying to stand here and tell you how fortunate you should be that we didn't raise taxes or have to raise them any more than that. That's an insult to the taxpayer. But what I am telling you is this is where we are by the numbers. Next slide, please. What are we going to have to do long term? Well, we are going to have to increase our tax base in this county. If we do not make a concerted, sensible, rational effort to increase the tax base, we're going to see this scenario play out year after year because somebody has to pay the increased costs. And what we've done is we have developed a technology study plan and an economic development plan over the next 2 years. There's copies back here. It's online. Please take one. If we run out, we'll be glad to print more. But what this does is set some goals and some policies and some strategies to not only attract new business to the county, but hopefully encourage new business startup in the county, expand existing businesses. We're going to continue to control spending levels because, the old saying is, if you don't control your spending, you never have enough revenue. And I think we see some counties around the Commonwealth that are probably experiencing that this year. When we look at this technology, when we look at an economic development policy, there's two things that we've got to think about. What happened in this assessment cycle was a wake-up call for this county. The county is changing. And the result of the change being allowed to control us is driving what's happening in the county. There's money coming in from the outside. You can't stop that. But if we continue to allow the change to control us, we've got two paths. We're either going down the path of Rappahannock County, where only the super wealthy buy property, and I'm not demeaning either any of our neighbors. They're all wonderful. Or we're going to end up going down the path of Culpeper County. And as someone mentioned to me over the weekend, a big fear in Culpeper County is that they are rapidly becoming Fairfax County with unfettered housing developments, having to build more schools, and we don't want to go there. So we have to take control of the change. And that's something that we always haven't done the best job of for probably the past 2 centuries. But that changes now. What we need to do is to control the change so we determine what this county will be. And I'm probably maybe stepping out on the limb a little bit here, but I think most people want this county to retain its rural character and charm and culture. And we don't want housing developments. We don't want all kinds of polluting industry. We don't want strip malls. We don't want any of that. But we have to do something. And if we have a policy in place that we have started, and we've actually started working on this. We're out actively soliciting new businesses right now. But we have unleveraged resources in this county. There is a fortune in buying power going through this county in Route 29 every day. How do we tap into that? More restaurants, maybe a northbound travel plaza like Sheetz. But there is an enormous amount of potential business revenue for our county and also tax revenue for the county. So those are some of the things that we need to look at. The other thing is, and I will tell you as a Madison native and as a member of the Board of Supervisors, this bugs me more than anything, and it has for years. because of the changes happening to this county. And the outside money coming in, more and more of our people are being pushed out. They can't compete. And I hate to see the children and grandchildren, mine and my neighbors, more and more of them standing on the outside looking into the prosperity of their home county and not having a chance to share in that prosperity. So the other goal of economic development is to make sure that we can give our citizens a fighting chance to compete. More business opportunities, hopefully higher paying jobs, because they're out there. But you have to have a policy. It has to be deliberate, it has to be long-term, it has to be sustained in order for those changes to happen. So again, take copies of that. You can certainly call me, contact any of us, call me, my number's on the website. It would be a relief because right now I get calls for Medicare plans, extended auto warranties, and now funeral planning. It's getting to be very depressing. So I'd like to hear from the citizens. That's, Mr. Chairman, my presentation, and we would be glad to take questions now.
Mr. Joe, thank you very much for clearing up some concerns that both I and my neighbors had. Yeah, sorry. I'm Alex D'Amico. I live in Hood. So this has been very informative, and I appreciate that. I do have one, I guess it's a question, about the outside agency that the board hired to do the assessments. I don't know if this is coincidence or if they actually used Zillow, because the day that I received my new assessment, I went on to Zillow, and the number that Zillow says my house is worth matched exactly. I hope my house is worth that much. My historical view of this is that Zillow overvalues houses.
Well, 2 comments. First of all, I'm going to refer your question to Mr. Daniels since he was in charge of this. But one consolation that I took from the reassessment was if you own property in Madison County, it's been one of the absolute best returns on investments you can have.
I agree with that completely.
And we fortunately, the folks that do own property here, they've been able to share in the wealth, the growth and the wealth of the county. But anyway, I'm going to defer to Mr. Daniels.
No, they do not reference Zillow ever. They conduct their own, or the Wingate Appraisal company is the company that was hired to do the reassessment. They are very familiar with Madison County and the surrounding counties. They've conducted reassessments in Page County, Rappahannock County, quite a few counties, you know, that are similar to ours. So they are familiar with Virginia, the real estate market, and they do kind of make jokes of Zillow as well on how they may oftentimes get the value wrong. My speculation would be that Zillow scrubbed data from numbers and are able to update their very quickly because they can access, once we put our values out there, they can scrub that data, grab that data very quickly and update their records. Again, that's speculative. You know, I'm speculating only there. So. Thank you. I appreciate it. Absolutely.
My name is Gregory Wustenhagen, and I just have a question. Is it typical for the tax assessments to reflect something close to an actual sales value of property? The reason why I mention that is because I've owned property in Fairfax County, Virginia. We owned our house here since '93, but my wife and I lived in Fairfax County till 2016. And in Fairfax County, I never recall seeing an assessment where the value from the assessment was more than 85% or so of what you would expect to be the actual sale price of the home. So I'm kind of wondering if this is something new. I know that I've spoken with some folks in a couple of neighboring counties, and their assessments are not reflecting the actual sales values of the homes either. So is this a new trend? Just had a question. Thank you.
Sure. As Mr. Jewett had in his presentation, the state code of Virginia does require 100% of fair market value. Now, obviously, there's always, or not obviously, typically there is a lag, and I'm not sure your experience in Fairfax County and other localities, but oftentimes you do see that lag in the actual, if you went out and got a fee appraisal and what is my true market value on this date, oftentimes we do see a lag there. However, the job of the reassessment company is to hit that 100% of fair market value on January 1st of 2025. It is not as specific as a fee appraisal, so they don't go in your house. They don't actually see, certain aspects of your house, but they do their best to communicate with you to find out how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Oftentimes, they know much of that information just from prior reassessments, and they don't have to go out and collect all that data. Certainly review the data that, that's why we did our best to get that information out on the website so that people can review, hey, are my bedrooms right? Is my square footage right? Certainly review that, and if you see any factual errors, contact our office, Commissioner of Revenue Office. And again, if you see other errors, you can work through or if you feel that your value does not reflect actual fair market value, you can appeal to the Board of Equalization. So.
Anybody else? Please, I like for people to get upset and argue with me, then I know what they're thinking. And I know it's work because after 40 years of marriage, I know exactly what my wife is thinking. But we're always open and we're always available to take questions. I will say that it's been a pleasure working with the staff of this county. It's amazing how they watch their pennies. And many of these departments turn money back in at the end of the year. They don't rush out and spend it so they get the same budget next year. That's not the way things work here. And that's really instrumental in why we've been able to keep spending under control. So if there's no other questions, I will thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Supervisor Dawson. Appreciate it.
All right. Back to the public hearing on the equalized tax rate. I guess we'll open it up to the public. Does anybody else have any public comment on the equalizing of the tax rate going from 74 to 49 per 100? Anybody else? Yes, sir, please.
For the record, name's Donald Stallworthy. I'm a resident of Riva, new resident of Riva. A couple points to make. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Daniels. His office is always superb to work with, and that was a great presentation. On the equalization, I like everybody. I'm an American. It's like taxes. I hate taxes. I saw this came across. I'm like, what's going on? So I really appreciate the explanation. It was great. None of us like taxes. But it's nice to know that the Board of Supervisors of the county is looking at this the proper way. You have that, and you follow the state statute. I don't like to pay them. Going to pay them. My wife and I moved out here from Fairfax County 3 years ago because we wanted the rural lifestyle. I want to put on record because I lived a lot of places. You're exactly right about the movement of the cities out. Up until February, I was driving to Washington, D.C. every day. 4:30 in the morning at Culpeper, traffic starts getting hairy. The closer you get, the worse it gets. It's inevitable, it's pushing, and if anybody has a question, you go in to look from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Colorado Springs, Colorado. In 1985, there were breaks between the cities. There are no breaks between the cities now. It is one 4-lane, crazy 8-lane madhouse. That's the nature of how it's gonna push and how Madison County's gonna do it. I agree with what you've gotta do on, diversifying, figuring out how to do the income. But it is gonna come, and how you're gonna make those decisions, that's some tough doing. But overall, I would say I'm relieved. I like to see the equalization. I got smarter. And I don't envy your job, but I think you're on the right path. And I appreciate it, and I wanted to get up and say, instead of complaining, say, thank you for doing what I think is due diligence and a good job.
Mr. Chairman, before the gentleman sits down, just for the matter of record, I have 2 inquiries, so we get the names correct. I believe a reporter's on line 2 and ask, sir, for the record, your name?
Donald Stallworthy, Stolworthy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gentleman in the back, I want to make sure, yes, sir. Thank you. I didn't mean to intentionally put you two on the spot, but just for the record, which is history, we wanted to get that out. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, other public comment. Anybody else have public comment on the equalized rate? Anybody else? Alan's, anybody online? There you go. All right, last call. Back to the board. What would y'all like to do? Comment, motion on resolution 2025-4. It was a good presentation, Joe.
Thank you.
It really was.
Thank you for the board's support and work on that, and the staff as well.
I will comment. I normally don't comment on much, but I can assure you, your dollars are being spent wisely here at the local level. I write the check with a clear conscience, and it's not because I just trust everybody blindly, but you can do that in this type of community. But with that being said, I know these folks, and they put in the hours, they put in the time, and everybody sitting here on this board, we do. We spend it like it's our nickels and our dimes and pennies, and so we're probably tighter with y'all's money than we are ours. So with that being said, I'm gonna make a motion to approve resolution 2025-4.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you all. Next meeting, we have public hearing on an actual tax increase, so we hope to see you all and hear what everybody has to say. Moving on, Mr. Weekly, tell us about Hoover Ridge Maintenance Building.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the board, I'm going to turn this one over to our Deputy County Administrator. Brian has been tasked to manage this project. This is a follow-up from the Hoover Ridge Barn. Pending board action, based on board action, we did move towards demo. This is now an old business item of what we think could occur next. Mr. Gordon?
Thank you, Board. I appreciate it. Just a little bit of history. Around or about January 7th, a snowstorm occurred. Catastrophic collapse occurred in the Red Barn itself. After several reviews of our building inspection and an engineer, realistic repair was deemed undoable. Based on board action, we demoed the barn on March 18th and 19th and removed debris subsequently in the days after. Insurance has given a payout of $101,000 minus a deductible of $1,000. That includes barn demo and rebuild if the board sees fit. I've been working with Parks and Rec and Facilities in the last month and a half to kind of discuss where we go from here. Right now, we're housing 95% of our equipment in a pavilion at Hoover Ridge with a temporary fence around it. Those components consist of mowing equipment, field equipment, just about anything you can think of to maintain that park. We've looked at a 120 by 60 foot structure, and that's coming from talking with the facilities and the PRA of what they would need to efficiently run, not only now, but in the future and the years to come. If you go to the next screen, we have talked about a potential plan for this building. This is purely speculative. The reason we're here today is to talk to the board and see what your feelings are on how we want to move forward. What's outlined in green there is new. That's an office area for the Parks and Rec and Facilities. Certainly not anything that needs to be done today. But the overhead part in the back is something that does need to be done in our opinion because of being able to shelter and secure the equipment that's out there. The main reason we're here today is we choose to rebuild if we have any indication that we want to look at that other portion and stubbing in those utilities and whatnot may be of benefit.
I just, if I may, Ms. Gordon, I would also like to add, we are also using the bus shop for storage as well. So we've got 2 locations. So we appreciate the school superintendent and the school board. As Mr. Gordon mentioned, this is a 60 by 120 shell. The thought behind this is, is to get the board's blessing, give us some direction on if you like the dimensions or not. The green, as Brian mentioned, would be future build out, thinking about the future expansion. If you're building a maintenance building, I don't know if you want to do that for just a now, but maybe the future. However, one option to look at is you would build you do your grading, do your concrete pad, put up the shell, which is the building itself. Probably recommend it to be a metal building is what we're thinking. Would include your doors, getting power to it, but put up a firewall. So what's in green, if you go out to bid, you can do that as a bid option. It doesn't lump you into doing it, but you can at least understand what it would cost. If it's within the range that you would like, you can select to add that bid item, or you can just look totally just on that building itself. Put it in the groundworks, as Mr. Gordon said, it just makes sense. If you ever anticipate having bathrooms or any kind of sinks, whether it's break room, bathroom, shop sink, there's a lot of mixing of paint and things that are going on as far as field prep. It allows for that. And that's something that can easily be stubbed out, whether you're coming back later, if you like the combining of offices and putting them in there. Again, at least you have to do the groundworks to come back later on if you choose to finish out that space. I think Mr. Gordon's done an excellent job. We've had a meeting with facilities and PRA to talk about what's all the equipment you have and all the attachments. And that's shown in there. If you see the kind of the little dash parking, if you will, to your right or my right of the screen, that's where all your implements can go. There's storage in there for the UTVs, zero turns, both facilities and PRA, which we know we're looking to bring that as a department here in the near future. So this takes care of now as well as providing some workspace. If the idea is to get facilities and PRA to continue to work closer together or even locating, this building would do that. Funding, Brian touched on half of that. You do have the insurance payout. There is a supplemental we're going to put in for the fencing, which was also an insurance claim, the temporary fencing that was around the Red Barn, and that still exists at the pavilion. What the insurance company has told Ms. Strother is that would be a supplemental. So we can apply for that. That'll be a supplemental check. That's why it wasn't part of the 101K payout. So you would have the insurance claim and a request use of contingency funds. Not sure if this board is ready to set that amount or wait until an IFB and those things come back. That's an invitation for bid. And then set that price. What staff is roughly thinking, we're not saying it will cost this, but try to set a target at $250 or less. So using your insurance, you had 100 contingency, that would mean another 150. Again, first steps is if the county, the Board of Supervisors believes this is the type of building you would like to see, and then if you wish to direct staff to issue an invitation for bid, which doesn't commit you at that time, but you at least do the scope of work, put it out there so folks can bid on the project, and you really know what the market is demanding for that. If you have options of bid, should you select that route, whether you would like to see it broken down, if we do a bid just for your site grading and pad and do a separate one for the building. Some of that, I think, believe, based on timing, when you would like to see this building erected. There may be cost savings the other way, not sure. Each IFB period is roughly about a 60-day window from the time we get everything ready to go out the door, give people time to actually come in, and you have a non-mandatory pre-bid meetings, and you get your bids, you go through it all, and then ultimately the board makes an award. If you do it together, one can certainly say maybe you might meet a time frame of early fall. That I know that's an ambitious schedule, but if the board moves forward, we would like to be able to try to get this done shortly near fall to get that equipment back under roof. So Do you have any questions or directions for Brian or myself? And Jerry's in the audience
Jerry,
as
you have
well.
any comments?
Get a mic, Jerry, if you're gonna.
Yeah, we're losing revenue by turning people away on the picnic shelter right now. And several people. And it's really disheartening to turn them away for birthday parties or anniversaries or everything. So we don't really have much of a choice as right now.
Thank you. All right. Questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a couple questions,
Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead,
Chairman.
please.
And this is for Jerry and both Mr. Gordon. Given that what we hope to happen in Hoover Ridge over the next 5 to 10 years, is this a scalable project? Will it fulfill the needs during that time, or did you anticipate additions?
You're talking about the addition of the park, the water park and all that
Yes,
thing?
all the increased activity.
That is looking into that, what we would need to manage that as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And the next question is, I guess maybe more for Ms. Warren, what are we looking at as far as money available to do this?
My recommendation to the board will be, at the next meeting, I'm gonna bring a supplemental appropriation for the 100,000 that we already have in the bank to ask the board to put those funds into a capital line item that will roll over. And then as we get closer to the end of the year, and we know what's left over in contingency, which right now, it's a little over 300 and something $1,000, we could then ask the board to take another 100, 150, depending on whether you want a price before or after, and then we could move from contingency over to that same capital line item.
Yeah,
Go-
oh, good.
go.
I got question, so, Jerry or Brian or whatever. So the part that's in green now would be under roof now.
Correct,
right?
correct.
It's just nothing, you could store equipment under there
Sure.
and stuff until perhaps that comes around.
Correct.
Because I was gonna say, otherwise, you just lost 26 by 60 feet of what you need. So you only really need 94 by 60 to accommodate the maintenance part, you know?
Correct.
Okay. And so there won't be a firewall down there put in at this time?
You could do it that way, or the smart thing to do is the firewall can be built at just about any point.
Okay.
Doing that. The stubbing of the electric, the water or the sewer or whatever, if we want to go that route to avoid tearing up concrete later down the road, that's what we would look to do now. But it's from a wall standpoint, we can certainly do that when we want to do it. The main shell of this thing, the 120 by 60,
Yeah.
would be there. The framing, what we do inside of it, that's manageable.
Well, I guess you could stop the concrete right there and just have gravel over there.
You could.
Or whatever. Well, I mean, that's all.
No, you certainly could. It would be advantageous if you're gonna pour a big slab like that, pour it as one deal and put everything down in the concrete. But that would
Yeah.
take a little bit farther work than this drawing, certainly.
Sure.
And kind of go through some vetting process to come out with something like that. A building that's 94 by 60, at this point, should certainly exceed all the equipment needs y'all need. Right now, I mean, it would take you well into the future, especially taking into account the facility that you just came out of, this being drastically better. I think the question is whether or not you, one, bid out the whole project with the option of that east build-out, which I certainly do not think we need at this point or can afford. But going ahead and getting something, I think the revenue is worth mentioning on the Carpenter Pavilion, certainly. It isn't a heck of a lot of money, so a little bit of time, it's more of an inconvenience for the citizens of Madison is really what it is. the real question I think that comes at us is what's the tolerance of the board as far as price point? The 100K from insurance is frankly certainly more than that barn was worth. So we came out pretty well on that. It's whether or not you go 2 to 250, and I think that's the real question here. And that's real money, and as we know, we'll be here again on Thursday.
We can, Mr. Chairman, if you like, and the board, I mean, I'm just looking at timetables now. If we got it out in IFB within the next week or two, you possibly could have this back the end of May, maybe making the first, decision at the first meeting in June, but at least you would know what the market's demanding.
Anybody else have comments on this? What do you all think about building this thing out, or at least going out to bid to see what the temperament of the building environment is? And do y'all want to do the option on the east build out as just option A to it without the expectation of building it out?
But with the expectation we will stub it out?
Yes.
The groundworks, what I'm hearing, if I may, to elaborate on Supervisor Yao's comments, the overall bid would include the groundworks. Am I hearing that?
Yes.
It's just the finishing would be your bid option.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for clarity.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right, everybody good with this? All right, let's proceed. Well, let's proceed, but then we probably should talk about it for a minute. What is the temperance of the board on price points? I mean, I think we should have something in there saying not to exceed, and I think we get a whole lot of wild numbers back as we see with government bidding. You want to put
Yeah.
I don't want to put 250 on it, but I think that's what it's going to take to get there. I think it's been more than 250. No,
You think?
Don't say that. Yes, probably. We all think.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's put it at 250 and see what it is. Everybody
Yeah.
fairly close to that. That's a real.
Bring it in at
arbitrary
150.
Yeah, there. That's
We're
the way
going
it
to try our best.
is.
Jerry, Brian, we got weekend work. We know that now. Hammers, nails, and
But we do need to build something
We've got to.
adequate. We don't want to, 2 years from now, well, we should have built.
And we do have money invested in equipment. And that equipment sitting outside is deteriorating at a much accelerated rate compared to what it is sitting in a facility. That's right.
There's another route. Instead of putting out a total IFB, there's a lot of companies, well, not a lot of companies, there's several companies out there that put these buildings up, but a lot of them don't do the foundation. Something we may look at is doing this, piecing this thing out, to getting somebody to do the foundation, getting somebody to do the building itself. It may be significantly cheaper to do it that way rather than getting a contractor to come in and dealing with all the other pieces of that.
If you're gonna go down that path, you've gotta go down the path on stick-built versus metal frame
Correct.
buildings.
Correct.
And then you've gotta start going down also the path of, cost considerations based on material cost. I mean, in my minor experience dealing with barns, a 50-foot truss is substantially cheaper than a 60-foot truss. And that's stick-built stuff. Metal's a whole different beast. But I mean, are we gonna go down all those paths as well? I mean,
I hate to bring it up, I mean, but is this a commercial building or is this a barn?
Oh, it's gonna,
Mr. Wilkes?
it will have to be a commercial building.
It's commercial.
There's no question.
Yeah, so I mean,
What did Jamie say?
It's commercial.
Mr. Wilkes, does it matter whether if the office portion isn't there, does that change? Okay.
okay.
No, it's definitely commercial. It doesn't count as a barn. It will look like a barn probably, but it is not. Go down I think what we should do is work up an RFP for this. See what you've got, bring it back to us here in a couple weeks. Let us take a look, and then we can go in a direction.
You want to go both directions to look at a turnkey project versus?
I don't know. Well, yeah, I think we should.
Okay.
There are specific vendors out there that do turnkey stuff that are way overpriced.
Correct.
Based on convenience, so maybe it will be better to piece it, but if the right contractor comes in, they'll want to do the whole thing and move on with it.
Okay.
What? No, we've got Herb White, who's our engineer, and he's sort of an architect. Sure you take offense at that. All right, Siri agrees. Y'all good on going down this path? Let's see what an RFP says. We know where our price point is and money goes. We've got rough dimensions, and then we can see what it says and go from there.
Thank you, members of the board.
All right, Ms. Turner, tell us about expired terms on the Building Code Board.
Sorry about that. I have too much technology up here. I'm fighting for room. Okay, so on March 10th, 2025, John Stamp and Scott Lohr's term on the Building Code Board of Appeals expired. Mr. Scott Lohr has informed the County Administration Office that he would be interested in serving another term. I'm still waiting on a response from Mr. John Stamp. If anyone has a phone number, I've been reaching out by email. That would be super helpful. I would recommend reappointing Mr. Lohr to serve another 4-year term, and would take your direction for Mr. Stamp.
What would y'all like to, does anybody have Mr. Stamp's phone number? This seems incredible that this is a problem. You don't know Mr. Stamp?
Well, I'm asking our building official.
Oh, you know Mr. Stamp? That's unfortunate. All right, we will.
So, Mr. Chairman, would the direction be if we are able to make contact, Mr. Stamp is willing to, the board would be fine with that? Or if not, we will proceed to advertise.
Normal procedure is that since he's not here and has not responded, we just reappoint him immediately. But I don't think that's the way this should go. The man excuse me, Scott Lohr,
Scotty.
Mr. Scott Lohr, yes, Scotty. What would y'all like to do with him?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Yes, if you can communicate with Mr. Stamp by something, we would be more than glad to have him back, but we would like a phone number. All right, moving on. Fire Resolution 2025-5. Mr. Weekly.
Thank you. Ms. Turner will bring that up on the screen again. My apologies on not the spell checking the volunteer there in the bold print. We know that's EER and not RR. So we'll fix that. Chief Coppich reached out to me the other day, and we're happy that he made me aware that the Virginia Fire Services Board mini grant they applied for, they were awarded some funding. I say some funding because the state of Virginia took the approach. I don't know how many applications they had, but overall they decided to award monies to all. Therefore, it reduced. I think they may have had like 26,000 was their initial request. So they did receive a grant and award letter for $12,381.12. As part of them receiving this, there is I think you may have the letter that Chief Coppich was given, the second page. It requires county administrator's signature and then accompanied by a copy of an ordinance or an instrument clearly granting me such authority to sign. Rather than asking you all for a vote and a motion to do that, which will go in the minutes, and that takes longer. No offense, we have a wonderful clerk. It just takes longer to get it that way and to meet the timeline. It was easier to prepare a resolution for the board to explain the funding and how they plan to use it, which is for really critical PPE turnout gear for them. It'll provide some. Certainly, it will not provide it for all, but for some. As well as I think it's a good way to show support passing a resolution. So staff has prepared that. If you so choose to pass the resolution, it would give me the, you're approving the award, and you would be giving me the authorization to sign off on that grant fund, which I will then ask him to notarize, and we will send this back to Mr. Coppich so they can receive their money before the deadline of May 5th.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2025-5 and authorize County Administrator to sign as well.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Any discussion? I feel like we've done that pretty heavily. Information and correspondence.
Just thank you all. I know You all have various roles and duties to do. Thank you all for those who are able to make it out at the groundbreaking ceremony. Thank you for, I know, press coverage of it. The PRA and the hockey community all were very ecstatic. Your budget meeting on Thursday, just a reminder, Ms. Warren and I and Brian, we put our heads together, but that'll be kind of a draft view of the budget, where we're at. So you'll kind of see some bottom line, and then you can give us feedback. But that's getting us a little closer to the target date. Again, you have a public hearing that'll be coming up on April 22nd. We do have to come back. I like to revisit administrative fees on Thursday so I can get final direction from the board and then advertise for that. That, I probably do not have enough time to make the April 22nd public hearing because of the timing. So we will maybe bring you some suggested dates. May 13th is when you have your public hearing scheduled for the FY26 budget. That will be when the public hears it, and you could as early act on that if you so choose. So that's just the information and correspondence I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Anybody else? All right, back to public comment. Public comment. Any public comment? Anybody online? All right.
Gracie.
Gracie, well, glad you joined us. All right, no closed session. What would y'all like to do?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Yeah,
This conference is no longer being recorded.